All right, guys, I have Sarah here today. Sarah, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
Sarah Broderick, landscape contractor. I appreciate you coming on today. Like I said, my beginning intro is always the hardest. It's always the hardest. I don't
It's
know
fine.
why. I don't know why. It's not like I'm nervous either.
Right, right. Yeah, it's all fine. We have our things. It is Sarah Bendrick.
Oh, well, thank you for correcting me, Sarah Bendrick.
Oh,
But
no
on that
worries.
note, though, Sarah, I appreciate you coming on and looking at some of your content, whether it be a little bit on TikTok and a lot on Instagram. You got great stuff. What
Thank
got
you.
you? What got you started?
In landscaping, I studied landscape architecture initially, and it took me a while to figure out what I wanted to do. And when I found that, I was like, love it, great direction. Now I still tie into that a little bit, but I'm not a landscape architect. I went the contracting route, and so I have a contracting business in San Diego that is landscape design and build. So it's basically everything outside your home, whether somebody's looking to completely tear everything down and start fresh, or just renovate a part of it, hardscape, softscape. Um, but yeah, I got started. It kind of was a progression, really. I went to school and then I worked for somebody else for a few years. So I really kind of got my feet wet in the residential end of things.
Okay, and I do find that you don't pick your passions pick you, and then you end up chasing them. And I think that's where the adventure comes from of things progressing the way they progress.
Yeah, that's funny you say that. I actually did a TEDx talk at my college at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo about opportunity follows passion, and I think that it's you just start doing things that you like, and but also just investing in when you put your energies into something, opportunities come your way. And instead of just searching for that one thing that makes you super happy, like what is it around you that you can already just invest your time in and be better at? And I think that sometimes we get so stuck into trying to find this one thing that's the perfect thing that we don't really just see what's in front of us sometimes.
Perfect doesn't come without the journey.
Yes,
Yeah. And if
definitely.
you wait for things to be perfect, it never happens.
Yes, that's how I feel, at least. Although I've been doing a lot of thinking about different personality types too lately, and I think that we all kind of have our own way of going down the roads that we go down, and there's not just one that makes sense, you know? Um,
Oh, I agree with you 100% because if you try to duplicate someone else's journey, it's nearly impossible.
right. Yeah.
Now
Yeah. No, it is very true.
you can glean from certain aspects of what they did, but you can never recreate it. It's not possible.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. 100% agree on that.
Um, on that note, you were talking about hardscape and stuff. I saw the recessed lights in the concrete. I've never done that. I did contracting with my dad for a little while. We did construction, remodeling,
Okay.
some new homes and stuff, but we never did that. I didn't even know that was an option. So was that like
Yeah. Well,
something you buy pre-made, or did you just put that in a PVC pipe and then pour the concrete around it? How did you do that?
so to make it look good, you'll want to buy a system that's meant to do it. Not
Oh,
that you couldn't figure out a DIY as long as you get your measurements right. But it's basically a PVC pipe, and it was shaved on the outside so that it perfectly would be put in the concrete, and then the cap of the light would cover the PVC. But really, if you could stick any light in there, but it's going with the system is much better. I mean, the finishers, it's not their favorite. It's not necessarily really hard. You just have to finish around it, and it slows things down. You're like, wait, I have this vision. Like, we need to put this in. But I wouldn't say it's very complicated. The only thing I would say is, if you haven't done them before, just making sure that you get that PVC pipe really level with the top of the form, because I've seen it sometimes where you have to like finish it up to the top of the PVC, and then it kind of like raises up. You don't really want that. So lowering it and making sure it's perfectly flush is ideal. And then only the light is protruding a little bit, and it's more like a mushroom cap, a very slight grade. And so it's, if you happen to walk over it, like it's not like you're walking into an edge. It's like a sloped little, it's a speed bump in your concrete, basically.
very unique idea. I think that was great, man. I loved it. I was like, man, I wish I would have thought of that a long time
Yeah.
ago because it's something you could have
Yeah.
just made up on the spot 10 years ago. But now
Sure.
everybody's putting so much effort into the backyard that there's
Oh, I
so
know. Is
many new
yeah.
things. Yeah.
I know. Yeah, I was just talking with Ryan Glidd, and he works with me and project managed for Sarita Landscapes, which is what I have here down in San Diego. And we were talking that just like, the average front and backyard renovation before the pandemic, you could get away with 50 to 60K for in California, a front and back. And nowadays, maybe even 40 to like 60, just in some range like that. But for landscaping, it's more like 75 to 100 now. And it's just, obviously inflation, but also like people are demanding more money. And it used to be back in the day that you could find labor at a certain rate, and it just doesn't exist anymore. It's like if you want people to show up on a job site, you got to pay them what they want to an extent. But yeah,
Yeah,
and
that's
you
a
can't blame them though.
yeah.
Everyone has bills to pay.
Yeah, it's wild the amount of money that people can get now for such menial
Yeah,
tasks. The basic labor has gone up a lot. It is pretty wild.
yeah.
But
Although I will,
that being said, though, I do think that people have stepped up the backyard game. It's not just
yeah,
there's no longer just I'm gonna have a man cave in the shed backyard scenario. Now
yeah.
it's everything. It's everything. There's a
Yeah,
bar.
people are
There's
really investing, but it's also really hard work. And I'm finding that a lot of it's hard to get people to show up to dig holes. That's not necessarily skilled work, but it's important work, and there's a way to do it right and wrong too. So I don't have any problem with, making sure people are paid what they should get paid, but it's more just that all those costs get translated onto the consumer, and people are willing to pay for it. They value yards like they never have before.
I feel like it's an extra 3 rooms to your house, really.
Yeah, especially in California or in like great climates, but even if you're in I don't know where Michigan or some people are still doing it. It's kind of funny because I used to travel the country doing landscape talks, and I do the West Coast and the East Coast, and it seemed that always like the Midwest would always pick up on the trends about 3 to 5 years later of what the coasts were doing. And so it was interesting to kind of see. It was like, oh, we're kind of getting over black and white houses, but it's just hitting here. Or that's probably not the best example, but like poured concrete and stuff like that. But you also see regionally huge differences from different areas, which it should be. You should be using materials that are easy to access in your area. And so in California, lots of concrete. It's arguably, if you want to talk about sustainability, um, anything you do to your landscape and building, like, yeah, you can rate them like, what am I trying to say? Like concrete is a great material, but it's huge resources from the planet and excavating and getting it there and finishing it. But the nice thing about it is you have a permanent finished space. And if you plan on using that the rest of your life, like perfect. The things that I start seeing problem with is when you're tearing up perfectly good stuff to change it for just a different idea. That's where I'm like, okay, we got to be better with the resources that we use in our landscaping and educating people on that too. It also oftentimes people are wanting to keep what they have to an extent because economically it helps out too.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'll be honest with you. Not only that, but you got runoff in certain spots where it rains more, and certain
Yeah.
trees do certain things, and you like to keep
Yeah.
things as native as possible, just for the sake of the uniqueness of your backyard. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't like to tell people like exactly what they should be doing because I think every person has their own story, they have their own family, they have their own way of living. But I do feel like it's good to inform people like um in a way like how are their design choices affecting the environment that they're creating. So a lot of times we'll find people's biggest motivation is low maintenance, and that's fine in theory, but oftentimes people associate that with pouring concrete everywhere and artificial turf for the rest of it, and we'll leave a 2 foot planter on the side of our yard, and there we go, we'll put some natives in there. And I'm like, well, I'd much rather you put no natives and just don't do that at all. um and what that does is when we're driven by low maintenance, in putting concrete and artificial turf, it raises the heat index of our yards, and if everybody in the neighborhood does it, it heats up our whole cities. So, in my opinion, like artificial turf should be seen as outdoor concrete. It's like it's an outdoor rug, like it holds heat, and so we just have to be conscious about, okay, are we completely covering the earth in concrete, turf, and other things? Or how are we keeping some of these spaces open so the soil can breathe, so that there's bugs and birds and they have resources as well? Because we live in big cities, or a lot of people live in big cities, and how we really choose to design our yards can have a bigger impact when everybody is falling into a trend like low maintenance when it comes to just concrete and turf, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
And all of it trickles down into like water usage. It all trickles down into like forest fires. I know you're on the West Coast, so I know that brush fires
Yeah.
are a big concern.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And like, it's, yeah, it's hard because I think I understand and I sympathize with people wanting a low maintenance yard, but there's better ways to do it that's beneficial for everybody. And that would be creating mulch areas, or even like if you're really into bees, and in California, I think it's, don't quote me, but it's somewhere between, I think, 5,000 or so native bee species, and most of them live in the ground. And if we cover up all of that ground, we're really not creating habitat for our pollinators. And California is a huge food distributor and stuff like that. Obviously the honeybees, they do a lot of that, but keeping a balanced ecosystem, there's a lot of research saying, like, you know what, you should even keep an open space of dirt somewhere. If you're really thinking about everybody that lives in your environment, those are things to consider. That, that's not what you're, that's not like the most glamorous thing, but if you're really looking to help out, those are things you can do that are fairly easy. And it's just a tweak in our mind of like how we look at the spaces we live
Yeah,
in.
yeah. I wonder if you could dress it up just the right way where it becomes something popular too. There's
Yeah.
there's got to be a way. There's always a way to make something prettier or give it at least some kind of facade that makes it look a little bit more
That's a
appealing.
great idea. I hadn't even crossed my mind. I'm just like, open dirt sounds good.
But do you know what I'm
But
saying? Because if you present it as a product, like it was the man cave or something, but you give it a specific term or name, you could turn
yeah,
it, you could start a trend yourself that actually literally makes it popular to have some dirt open up in the corner or something.
sure. Yeah, like you gotta give it a
Just gotta
catchy,
coin, yeah, you just gotta coin that word.
yeah, catchy name and a marketing team. No, I'm just kidding.
You never know. You never know. You just don't know how it's gonna play
Yeah,
out.
yeah, yeah. No, it's definitely like I really love my job and I love working with people, and I don't want to come across like I'm anti-concrete or um artificial turf. I I think there's good uses for every material, but everything should be balanced, um, and not one material dominating our landscapes, more or less.
That makes sense. Yeah, I'm in southern
Mhm.
Texas, and there's a lot of hardscape here. There's a lot of like just
Yeah.
rocks because grass is hard to
Yeah.
come by,
Yeah.
especially when it doesn't rain for like a year.
Well, that's interesting to think about because where you are, like, what would the natural landscape be? Is probably rocks and like tumbleweeds. I'm just assuming.
Oh yeah,
I don't
when
want
I
to put
moved
any
there, when I moved
stereotypes
here, I
on
thought
you.
everybody was gonna be like a cowboy, and there was gonna be tumbleweeds and wily coyote. I didn't know what to expect when I came down here.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that it is interesting how and and also in California there's some people that are anti-lawn because it uses so much water, and all of these arguments have pros and cons, and some lean heavier on one side or the other. I was doing a little research a few years ago, and the statistic may have changed, but if I'm remembering it right, about 2% of the United States is covered with lawns. And that's a big space, depending on like how are we where's all the water coming from? Are they all being fertilized with chemical fertilizers? It's very very well known that when you have a lawn and you're using chemical fertilizers, that a lot of it doesn't actually go to the lawn. It leaches into the water and it gets spread around and stuff like that. um and so it's just so fascinating to kind of like think about all these things that we're doing. I actually quite like having a lawn. I just encourage people to try to use drought tolerant species as much as they can, reduce the square footage, because there's nothing quite like having a lawn to go lay out in the middle of the day if your landscape can support it and you can afford the water to water it. um but trying to stick more on the organic, or like limiting it to places that you're going to use instead of just putting it on the in between the street and the sidewalk. I forgot the name. Um, ah,
It's like an easement. I don't know what the word
yeah,
is though.
sure, we'll go with that. Um, where it's not really being used other than maybe a dog bathroom. So those aren't good uses of lawn. But if you want to have a little in your yard that you're going to use, then by all means do it. If you don't plan on using it, like there's great alternatives when it comes to like bunch grasses and other things that you can group together to get that green effect, almost a meadow effect that uses significantly less water too.
That's pretty smart, actually.
Thanks.
I,
I mean,
I love grass, though. I'm not going to lie. I love having
yeah,
the grass in between my toes, on my feet. It's a great
yeah.
feeling.
No, and I do too. And that's why I like to go back and say I don't think there's one material that's necessarily evil. It's just that we often don't think about what we're using and where we're using it and how we're using it, and whether that comes down to how expensive is it going to be for me to maintain this, or um are my choices creating a lot of heat. And in fact, in big cities, I much rather people have real lawn than fake lawn, because at least it cools the space down, it transpires moisture into the air, it feels completely different for us as humans. And to walk out on a hot like block wall, like plastic grass and concrete area that's just emitting heat, and I mean most artificial grass is made out of like poly oh, I can't remember, polypropylene and stuff like that. And and that gets
That's
hot,
oil.
it does
That's oil
release.
based. Yeah, so
Yeah,
that's terrible. Yeah.
right. So I don't know. These are the things I think about at night.
But yeah, you're basically walking on PVC pipe, shredded PVC pipe.
Right. And then the question is too, okay, in 20 years when this lawn is completely shredded and no longer functional, where does it all go? Like it's just gonna
I heard the
fill.
Chinese are no longer taking our recycled bottles.
Hmm.
They used to take them
Yeah, I
all, and
heard.
they don't take them anymore.
Yeah, I heard a long time ago that they half of them weren't even being recycled anyways. They're just being
So why are we?
disposed.
So yeah. So what are we doing?
Yeah,
Are we recycling
I
at all?
know.
Is it actually recycling, or are we just feeling good throwing it in the blue bucket?
Yeah, I don't know. Like it's
Because I pay extra just to put it in a blue bucket.
right.
Yeah, I want to know that it's either going to China or someone's. I don't know. What can you do? Can you clean
Yeah,
it and reuse it? I don't know. I know you can.
right. And so
I know you can only melt it down so many times.
right. Well, especially with sun damage to plastic. So any of the artificial turf is going to be too degraded to be recycled.
There you go. I didn't
And
even
they
think of that. Yeah, that makes good.
they may be working on ones that aren't, but again, ugh, it's at the end of the day, all these fake lawns that are being put in are going to be dumped in 20 years or so and just filling our landfills. And
And you can't
not
burn it.
only
You
that,
can't burn it.
no, you don't want to burn it. And then of course all the soil underneath it is completely dead and desolate. Not that you can't regrow it, but there's actually a huge epidemic of us losing healthy soils in the United States and really the world, and it's really hard to replenish. And in fact, there's so much biology that lives in our soil, and like nowadays the food we eat is not nearly as nutritious as it used to be when our grandparents' age and before that, because we're growing fast, we're not growing with as much density in the soil, and so they're just getting less nutrients. We're getting bigger, juicier, sweeter produce out of our yards, but it's not necessarily healthier. And that's what happens when we deplete our soil and you don't have all those systems naturally working to support our plants. And also just healthier, like even with lawn, if you want to talk about lawn a little bit more, is I've kind of leaned into more organic systems that feed the soil of the lawn, and that increases those roots to go down further, making them need less water, but they also have less diseases in general because they're able to, the soil biology underneath the lawn is a lot healthier, so they can withstand more instead of planting in dirt. Which, are you familiar like the difference of dirt and soil?
One's got a little more blacker than the other.
Yeah, so basically dirt is like what you sweep out of your house. It's like it's like particles and minerals and stuff like that. There's no life in it. And then soil is the biology, including those minerals with all of the nematodes and other things that are mixed in there. There's a lot, microorganisms and all that stuff. So that's what we want, and that's being destroyed quickly when we cover our landscapes with very hot environments.
Yeah.
And sorry, I'm totally nerding out on this. So
No, it's great. I'm actually learning. I'm sure other people are too because it's a unique conversation.
feel free to swing me in any direction. I'll just go down that rabbit hole.
Well, let's do it. Okay. Well, on that one, I saw one of your things where you were working on the Brady Bunch house. That's super
Yeah.
cool. How did you possibly land on that?
Okay, so I worked on the Brady Bunch project more or less behind the scenes. So I wasn't per se on camera. Like they did a few video clips. I don't think any of them made the cut, but that's okay. So one of my really good friends, Dylan Eastman, he was the project manager, and honestly, like he is so creative. He worked on all of those, like he used to work on so many projects for HGTV and DIY, and he's really the creative brain behind bringing it all together. And so luckily, I know him, and he needed some new plants and was in Southern California. So he brought me on and he basically gave me the super grainy photo and was like, match these. I'm like, I can't even tell what species this is. um, but I can definitely match the aesthetic. So, we found we had to trim back some of the existing there were some trees and some of the existing vegetation to bring it back down to what it looked like in the 60s. And we ended up transplanting a huge palm from the backyard into the front yard that looks very similar as a Mediterranean fan palm. And that was a huge effort. And if I remember correctly, it was probably like at least $1,200, sorry, $12,000 or so to, crazy. But I mean, it was a big tree. It just puts a little context. Like it was so much work though. Like
Did you guys
honestly,
use that really cool that arm that has the three fingers and it just digs right in and grabs all the
no,
roots, but
no,
and then holds the tree and just walks with like a backhoe, just walks over and
no. I don't.
okay.
I feel
I
like
don't know
maybe
what
I've
that's
seen that.
called, but I've seen it several times.
No, so what they did is because it was a huge root ball, they kept about 3 to 4 feet around the base. And then they had a crew that dug out about 3 or 4 feet from that just to be able to get in there with like human bodies to wrap the root ball. They tapered the root ball down so it was more narrow at the base and taller at the top. And they wrapped it in burlap. And the idea behind that is you want to hold the soil next to the roots because most of the nutrients pulled up into the plants are these tiny little hairs, like kind of like on our arms or legs, and you can't see them. Those are what's pulling most of the nutrients. So if you let the soil fall off, they fall off with that, and it's a huge shock for the plant. And sometimes they don't make it. So wrap it in burlap to hold all that soil tight, keep all those roots in place the best that you can. And then they had a giant forklift. They came through. They tied some oh my god, some big ropes around it and then lifted it up and we're able to drive it to the front yard. I think I have that on my social media on my Instagram as a recent post.
Okay, I'd have to look because that sounds like a wild endeavor.
It was really fun.
Yeah.
um yeah, it was pretty fun
I
for
love
sure.
I love playing through the logistics and trying to figure out the nuances of what has to be done to really do it
Yeah.
successfully. Because there's all kinds of extra stuff you don't see until you're
Yeah.
actually done.
Yeah, exactly. I think this industry is great for people that are good at changing plans on like in short times in a short time span because I mean you can plan all you can but sometimes you just don't see what's under the soil or a crew hits the water line or you just I mean when you do construction enough obviously like you put those unknowns into the timeline somewhat but for me I I'm not a very like linear structured person. I'm more of a big picture creative. And so being able to take on a project like this where I get to like do the full visual, I might not go from A to B to C. I might go from A to F and then to here and but it all turns out.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I'm the forest. I don't see the trees.
Sure, sure. Yeah. So, and that's why you got to get like for at least me and my company here in San Diego, um really Ryan, who works with me, is more of an equal in the company, and he's the more linear, on time. Like, hey, we have an appointment. I'm like, oh yeah, um, and I'm kind of the more creative, and I'm thinking. I mean, he's creative too, but it's a good balance between us for
And if you
sure.
bounce off each other properly, it works out perfect.
Yes, it does. When you find people that bring up your weaknesses, and then vice versa, and all that, um, yeah, it's a good thing.
Yeah. Another post I saw is someone talking about the value of trades and how
The
the
value
schools
of
of the trades in general, whether it be
oh sure,
construction, whether it be landscaping, all the trades. And it's a unique topic for me. I really do find that it's a mistake to let those just fall to the wayside, just like the arts. I think both have
yeah.
an intense value. It just some
Yeah,
people were meant to dig a post hole. That was. I'll be honest with you. I loved construction. I enjoyed working with my dad so much. I still consider it my best time in my life. We did it for 10 years together, and I would go
Yeah.
back in a heartbeat if I could.
Yeah, no, it's great to use your body physically. I mean, it benefits everybody to, keep their body moving and stuff like that. But I think for some people, especially if you have like ADD or anything like that, like being able to be hands on with a task and stuff like that, I think can be um super well. What I don't like about that is that people are being seen as like you don't fit into the system of sitting down for 8 hours a day in a job or in school and all of that. I'm like, a lot of us are not designed that way anyways. And I saw like a recent study, and I think it was Sweden. Oh, I wish I had these off the top of my tongue. But it was a northern European country, and they only have school for 4 hours, and they outperform America and most of the other schools in terms of how much their kids are retaining, because there's only so much information you can gather. And us cutting out recesses and arts and wood shop and all of that, those are the physical things that we need breaks from to come back to being able to focus. And I know it's true for myself. Like,
Well, they're the mind and body are more integrated than we realize, and actually
yeah,
solving problems with your mind while using your body is actually like the ultimate pinnacle of how you are designed as a
yeah,
machine. I mean, we're kind of like machines, and it's
yeah,
not, you know what I mean. And the body and the mind, they sync up very well together when they're working in tangent for the same
yeah,
goal. And
yeah,
there's something to be said too about just draining that battery when you're exhausted after 10 hours of actually doing something. It's a different type of tired than sitting in your car and driving, or sitting at the desk, or even if you're standing up at the computer. 10 hours is exhausting, but it's a different type of tired.
right. It's not, like not a recovery tired, really. Like sleeping doesn't. I mean, sleeping obviously is helpful, but I know 100% what you mean, because I've kind of bounced between doing like project managing and running, the computer and all that, like, and doing the physical work. I love the physical work, but to run a business, like, you really have to have both. And like, I've gone a few years ago, I just like dove straight into like the business side of stuff. And man, one, I gained weight. Two, I just wasn't strong like I was. Like, I wasn't feeling as great as I should. And I was like, man, like, can't imagine. Like, and also just like there was no boundaries to my time in terms of like I could work till 10 p.m. and whatever, but it's not healthy.
And there's those occasional moments where you have like that Neanderthal feel where they're like, "Rah, I was able to do it. I did it. It wasn't possible, but yes, it was.
Yeah.
I could move that tree and keep it alive." And
Yeah.
I don't think you get that in any other aspect of life than actually keeping your mind and body on that same
Yeah.
course for that hard.
Yeah. I know what you mean.
Yeah, I'm trying to think
Um,
of a word for it because it's such a unique circumstance. Like I said, it can't be duplicated any other way.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that makes I 100% agree. And I think that it's kind of sad to me that it's becoming our bodies are becoming so foreign to us, and like we're so scared of hurting them and all that stuff. Where, man, my sister, she decided to move out to Virginia and raise her kids on a farm, and like those kids do everything. I'm like, man, if something ever happened, those kids are gonna survive. Like, they know how to eat, they know how to cook, and they're like 5. They can go feed the animals.
That's
Like,
another one too. Is you could do stuff at a younger age than you possibly would imagine. Your
yeah.
your kids. I've got kids, and that's one of the reasons why we were late this afternoon. But they're way more limber, and they're way more flexible for the
Yeah.
environment than we think. They're ready to go. They're ready to pick up things, and they have this weird ability to perfect things. You know how like I remember as a teenager, you fold a pizza box, and the
Uh-huh.
first time you do it, it takes like 30 seconds, and you're terrible at it. But
Yeah.
when you're on box 100 and it's like muscle memory, you're actually thinking about something else while you're doing this mundane task, because it's almost became like something that's built in the back of your brain. You don't take any. It doesn't take any thought whatsoever anymore. And kids are like masters at doing that to anything.
Sure.
It's
Yeah.
really weird how malleable they are on that front. So you can get them to do the wildest tasks, because my parents had goats and stuff, and they can do almost anything and pick it up like that and then master it before you even know it. And they're looking at you
Yeah.
like, why is this taking you 5 minutes? I've been doing this for 2 weeks. I've got it down pat.
Yeah, no, it's wild. I don't have kids, but like I totally hear what you're saying. And I see it with my nieces and nephews for sure.
Yeah. Well, I got 6 kids, so I've
Oh wow.
relived my life 6 times already, and it's funny. You see yourself in each one of them. You see yourself in each circumstance, and then you step back if you can, if you have it in you to step back. You're like, wow, they've got way more in them than you realize, and
Yeah.
it's just a wild journey to watch them go through a journey.
That's kind of the nice thing too about having, I guess, a lot of kids is that you don't have as much time in a way with each of them. So they have to, there's more time for boredom sometimes and figuring that out.
Yeah,
Like
it's kind of
figuring
weird. Yeah,
out,
people tell me like, how do you do it or whatever, and I'm like, well, it's you almost have like your own little ecosystem because these
yeah,
kids help each other, and this one's better at that, and there's one that does hair so good that everybody goes to her no matter what. You know what I mean? And it's funny how it plays out because then they bounce off each other, they sharpen each other because they don't let you forget that you're not as good, and there's a constant competition in the house, and
sure.
it's kind of unique to watch.
Yeah. Well, I 100% believe that.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I was late. One of them broke her arm. She's
Oh my gosh,
yeah,
Jesus.
insane, absolutely insane. She broke both of the little bones. So
Oh
people don't realize that when you
no.
see someone with a small cast, that's just one little bone. But when it goes past the elbow, they don't want you to twist your arm because those
Oh,
two bones are not connected. If one's connected, the other one won't move
uh,
as much. Well, anyways,
poor thing.
so yeah,
That
yeah, yeah.
sounds that sounds terrible. I was like, did I get my time zone wrong? I had to look up.
No, you were great. You've been great. It just I constantly have stuff to do,
Oh yeah.
and now they're out of school, so it's exponentially more time consuming. And
Yeah.
I almost have to bribe a couple of little ones to not come in the room. Yeah,
Yeah.
frustrating.
Yeah. I can only imagine how hard it is to focus on work.
It's
Oh,
like I have to do this for 1 more hour, no matter what. So if you just let me do it, we can do anything else for the rest of the day. I just need one
yeah.
more solid hour. But that doesn't resonate in a 6-year-old
No.
as well as you would think it would.
No, no. I believe that. Yeah.
All right, let's see. Another one you got there. The new type of siding you have. You have siding there that looked okay. So I did new construction vinyl siding. My father for the last like 5 or 6 years. That was almost exclusive what we did. And they started coming out with like this PVC board, and I know they had the hardy plank and a couple of things. But I saw you playing with something that was a little bit different than all the other stuff I've seen before. And I'm out of
Sure.
the game for a while now. So what was that siding that you working
So that
with?
was LP Smart Side, and I had the expert finish on it, which is basically a factory finish on the outside. But it is a wood strand board, and it's chemically treated with borate. I think that's how you say it. And there was one or two other things. So basically, it's antifungal and also anti-termite. But the nice thing about it is that you can get up to like 16-foot lengths on one board, and you can take a stack of them and be able to move that around the house, which is great. But if you have like a cement fiber, obviously like you need shorter pieces. You might have more breakage in the structure. But I've dealt with a little bit of vinyl, and I'm not a house contractor, I'm a landscape contractor. But one of the biggest things that you can change about a landscape is the house. So
That's a good point.
um
Yeah.
so in some of the shows I've done in the past for DIY HGTV kind of areas is the we would do vinyl often because it was quite affordable and we were always on a budget. But it was really nice to work with LP to reside my cabin, and it made a lot of sense because the cabin I bought was very unique. It had a lot of different areas. It was hard to work around. So being able to move this material around the site pretty seamlessly was a really good opportunity. And also that it came pre-finished means that it was up. Like same thing with vinyl, whatever, it's finished. There was no need to paint it or anything else coming back. And then it had the corners that were already formed together. So you can order 90s that were already, you just slap those up. And then I like the cedar texture. Or yeah, I like the texture. There was a smooth and a textured. I got the textured. And sorry, is that noise really loud? I don't know if you can hear that.
It's fine.
Okay. But I got the textured, and overall, like I honestly I was a little nervous to reside my cabin because I loved the old redwood that was on the house initially, but it was just redwood plywood. It was like it in the house like had been abandoned for a while and there was rat holes chewed through it. It needed it, but I was afraid that I wasn't going to like a new aesthetic on an old cabin, and I think it looked great honestly when it was done. And it looked polished but still had a lot of character, and that was the biggest concern of mine is how do we keep that character of the cabin. And I used two different colors and two different textures, and I think that really helped bring it all together.
That's super cool. I'm glad I asked because that's unique. I didn't even know that stuff existed until I watched you with your contractor messing with it there. I was like, what the heck?
Great, yeah.
At first, I thought it was really wood because it looked almost like real wood. But I didn't
Yeah,
realize it
I
was
mean,
16 feet. 16 feet's huge. Vinyl
it
normally
is
comes
huge.
12 and a half feet, and I thought that was huge. Because
Right.
in my 20s, I could pick up a two square box. But if
Hmm.
they were 16 feet, there's no way. I don't
Yeah,
think. I don't
and
know.
because it's yeah, because it's wood strand, they're able to they use mostly aspens, and then it's grounded up, obviously, and pressed together.
Yeah.
But that means they can use pretty much most of the tree. I mean, I don't
So
know
is
if
it
they
more
use
like
leaves.
fiber decking? Is it like the Trex kind of stuff? Is it that kind of like wood with
No,
no?
no, no. It's like you can if you flip the board over, you see the wood. It's more or less like an OSB
Okay.
with the antifungal and the anti-rot properties, and then the expert finish on the outside, which I believe is a combination of resin and wax. There's one other thing I think there. So basically, it's highly protected on all sides of
Yeah.
it.
Super cool.
But
But
yeah, it was great.
have you been on a podcast before?
I have. It's been a little while. I don't do them all the time. I know I should probably do more of them, but I probably do like one or two a year,
Okay.
um, here and there. But no, this was great. I like that we could just like go down some different avenues. I did the Bellegarde podcast. They have one. I did that, gosh, end of last year, I think. Yeah, last September, November. And that was a nice one, a good audience, and just a good community. Obviously, Bellegarde pavers and all the people that listen to that in the contracting world.
Yeah, I've caught a couple contractors. There was another guy that did a lot of hardscape, and they got to play with a lot of toys. This guy had it's not a backhoe, it's not a bobcat, but it's kind of like a standing up bobcat, and he's able to. And he had a vacuum to pick up some of the bigger rocks that he works with. This one guy had all kinds
Oh,
of really cool toys, man.
yes, I would absolutely love to play around with that stuff.
Yeah, yeah. So I didn't even know that was an option because every time we did stuff, my grandfather
Yeah,
taught my dad, and my dad pretty much did everything the way my grandfather did it. So we really
sure.
did everything really kind of old school until we got to the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fair. I mean, it's hard to know the new stuff coming on the market. I find the home shows like IBS and like World of Concrete. I haven't been to that one yet, but or GIE. Oh, they don't even call it that anymore. But I feel like those trade shows are great for just seeing what's new, and how else would you know? Unless you see it online, but it's so much better to see somebody in person and get to feel and touch and talk to the experts versus, who knows what gimmicks are online.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You don't want to be the test dummy either.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Oh.
All right. Well, Sarah, on that note, I'd like to ask you about your content creation on Instagram and stuff, and what got you started on just publishing your own stuff.
Sure. Honestly, if I'm being completely honest, I feel like it's a lot of work. I enjoy doing it. I feel like for the amount of work I put in, I would like it to continue to grow. It's social media is it's a funny thing, and I wish I had more time for it in a way, but then at the same time, I'm like, well, I kind of like living in this real world too. But I do enjoy creating content about the projects we do or information about like landscaping in general. And I love doing that. I just have a hard time following a pattern, and I know that's what like you have to do to be successful. I'm not to say that I'm not. I think I have a great following, and I love my followers. But it's always like, oh man, I didn't post in a week.
And you feel
Okay.
guilty. You feel real guilty too, because you
Well,
you
I,
know
I
you're
gotta say,
supposed to.
I got to start seeing it as a business, and I have for a while. It's just like figuring it in with, buying a house and have running my other business. And a lot of people struggle with this. Some people clearly are very good at it. Um, you see people with these growth stories, and like I see how they're doing it, and it's not a knowledge thing. It's a practical like bringing that knowledge into fruition. It's a doing thing for me. Oh,
Yeah,
but
when you have a lot on your plate, adding another thing
yeah. But I mean, overall,
is.
like I love doing it. I'll continue to do it. Um, this year, my goal is to be a little more organized. Every year is just a little bit more organized with it and kind of creating that consistency to it that I think would benefit it. Because people like to know what to expect with the content. So, you know, I certainly think it's a in modern business, it's like you kind of have to have something, in a way, if you want to. I mean, we get business through that, but we also get tons of business through referrals. Like, you don't have to have it, but it's definitely another avenue that's free if you're willing to put the time into making it something.
Oh, I know it makes a big difference for contractors. I've had guys say that they're exclusively getting some of their business
Yeah,
through Instagram because nothing beats that calling card that is actually a physical video. So I
yeah,
hear someone like my neighbor say, "Oh, he did a great job." Go check out his Instagram. Man, if you got a good Instagram, the fact
yeah.
nobody on earth
Oh,
is
yeah.
gonna not. They'll take you over the guy without the Instagram all day.
I know, and it is
All
so
day,
interesting.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
Well,
people
because like,
want to do the research too.
yeah, and it's basically, yeah, an invitation to get to know you before they have to invest their time getting to, they get to know you on their time before deciding to reach out to you, which is a huge advantage because if they are reaching out to you, they've already decided that they like you and your business. And so they're more invested. Where I feel like back in the day before that, people were bouncing around a little bit more. And I don't know if it's just my social following or if people are like, I want to hire a female, or I don't ask. um, but I feel like when people contact us, 90% of them are want to go through the whole process with us from the beginning. And I feel like before that, it was kind of like when they didn't get invested in you as a business or individual, it's kind of like, well, let's entertain a lot of people and see what happens. See who we go with for this or that. And
Yeah,
um,
so that must be far easier because yeah, not having to compete with so many other people in and of itself allows for a lot more
yeah,
flexibility.
it's almost like the clients are convincing themselves who they want to work with, and then they're emotionally invested in that, which can be super beneficial. It gives them a comfort level for sure, and it also gives you a business advantage.
Do you find it
Um,
makes them a little more indecisive? Because I know this, they did studies before where if you have 3,000 colors to choose from versus four colors, you'll never be satisfied with the color you pick with 3,000. And people get more satisfaction out of being forced into that more limited space.
sure. Um, yeah, I guess there is, yeah, a ton of people out there on social, so it might be hard to try and pick and choose. But I feel like our businesses and us as humans are so much more dynamic than say picking colors, and I think you're going to automatically be drawn to personality types, or if you're a good storyteller on social media, like those, that's how you connect with people. And so it's not apples to apples. It might it might be like that's the best builder, but if they can't communicate that visually or verbally, then people aren't going to feel emotionally connected to that contact.
That makes sense.
um
Yeah.
And it's a pretty personal, like doing landscapes is very personal. You have to invite people into your space. You have to tell them what you want. You have to tell them how much money you have to invest in it. Like it's not a casual transaction. It's a huge investment. Probably second after buying a house is if you're doing a major landscape renovation. So you want to work with somebody that you like and that you think is going to understand what you need. And you can easily pick up that because you can be a great designer, but if you're arrogant and you are yeah, that might be great if you're designing like MoMA or some big park in Los Angeles, but if you're designing someone's backyard, they want their opinions to matter and weigh in, even if it's not the best idea. If they're like, I really want pink and black polka dots for my fence, like if that's what they want, that's what they want. Like I might be like, okay, let's make that just super rad then. We'll figure it out. um yeah.
How often are you in a situation where your creativity is stifled by the customer's need for something that doesn't make any sense?
Not as often as you might think. I occasionally that happens, but I would say it's most often what they want and whether it's realistic to their budget is another thing. And so we have to ask questions like, well, is this a forever yard or are you going to be here for a long time? Because if so, I would encourage you to design it how you want it and figure out how to do it in phases, or DIY some of it yourself to really get what you want. But if you're only planning on being there like less than 5 years, let's go a more budget route, and let's get something that's going to get you good ROI. Like the objectives change a little bit.
That was my
So
thing. I was going to say return on investment's huge too,
yeah,
especially
especially if
lately.
you're building these.
Last 5 years, houses, it's insane. Every dollar you put in is worth like six.
Yeah,
It
yeah. So
feels
it's
like
great.
it feels like it, right?
It's been great for business. It's a good time, and uh, you know, I've been in it when in 2009 and 10 when things nobody was spending money on anything, and so that was very humbling. And I will never forget that. And I've always diversified my income because of it. Um, at some point, like if people don't have money to, landscaping is a luxury. You don't need it to eat. I mean, unless you're growing your own food. Landscaping is a luxury. Um, I like it to be accessible. Like DIY should be accessible to everybody, but um, it's you're gonna live if you don't have it. However, I will say, like, I think that what we do in our outdoor spaces is hugely important to how we live. And so if you have an amazing outdoor space, you're going to be spending more time outside, which in general is better for your health than saying being stuck inside the house in front of a TV. You have a great lounging area that's like perfectly shaded in the afternoon, and like you get to watch some of the bees and butterflies, read a book, or if we yeah, like it's a completely different thing, and I think it hugely benefits us to take advantage of the spaces that you already pay money for.
Yeah, it's very healthy for your mind. I believe that just hearing the birds and stuff, it changes your whole mindset sometimes. Even if
Yeah,
it's just 10 minutes in the morning. Yeah,
yeah. That, the sound of water or the visual of water, any of that stuff, like those are all picking up on things that we don't think about, but we're so intrinsically connected with, just as being human.
yeah, yeah. We're more connected with each other. We're more connected with the planet than we realize.
Yeah. Oh,
Or at
100%.
least the ecosystem. At least the ecosystem. We're far more intertwined.
Yeah.
So yeah, you get to do that. But it sounds like, man, some people spend more money than I bought my house than what I paid for my house. The way you talk on some of these budgets.
We're in California.
Yeah, I'm outside of San Antonio, and I'm not gonna lie to you. I did not pay that much for my house. I got pretty lucky. It was a fixer upper.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean you're gonna take that into consideration to wherever you are and what the market is demanding. Obviously California, New York, all these big markets, the people that have a lot of money are coming out to, um, you know, 10 to 25% of the house value is what you should expect for your landscape. 10 is low, that's like super basic. But about 25% of your house value is what you can expect your landscape to cost historically if you're redoing stuff. But building outdoor rooms, like nowadays, like we're not talking like lay some grass and some trees. People are building like roof structures that have fans and heaters and like
Yeah.
outdoor kitchens. Like
I've seen it. Yeah, and it's gorgeous. They're absolutely gorgeous. TVs coming out of nowhere. Yeah,
yeah,
it's just beautiful. Yeah.
yeah. So you're building a room addition at that point, and it's going to cost the equivalent, more or less, to a room addition. Um,
But yeah, your numbers lined up perfectly. Yeah, you're right. 25% sounds about right. Yeah, that's pretty wild that you were able to nail that. So you've been doing this for a while. How long have you been doing? You said 2008. You were struggling a
yeah.
little bit there. So how long
Well,
before that were you doing it?
so I graduated 2009, 2010. No, 2010 actually. So, and I started my own business in 2012, but I worked 2 years for another company before that.
Okay.
So
So you
I'd
watch
say
you
from
watch them
2010.
struggle. You watch them really pinch pennies at the end there, right?
Yeah, yeah, it was definitely, I was very grateful for the job right out of college. It gave me a lot of knowledge of like working with clients, understanding construction budgets, and well, one, just managing personalities. It's one aspect. Managing people's money is another, and then I'm obviously working in a group setting, and bringing the creativity of like plants and design. Like I love all those aspects, and I think that I've honed my skills to a certain ability in the last 13 years. I would say I did the first 2 years with them, and then after that, I got into TV. I got the opportunity to work on a few DIY shows, and I've loved that. And that's really what kind of launched me to pay attention to social media. And honestly, I think if I had never done TV, I probably wouldn't have done social media. I don't. It's so hard to say, right? But it's like, well, if I'm gonna do this, I might as well do this, Um, but yeah, it was so in the beginning, I was not when I started my own business, I was going door to door, like leaving business cards and like, hey, your yard looks like you could use some help. Um, to get started. And then
That's so funny, man. To see. Okay, so have you seen one of those guys that does the lawns for free? He'll find the most messed up yard he can find in the neighborhood, and then he'll
sure.
knock on the door and he'll be like, "I'll mow your lawn for free." And then he does like a
Yeah.
fast forward. That guy's got like 10 million views. I think he's got like 10.
No.
It's insane. He's
Yeah,
making a
it's like
living just on TikTok.
doing free work. Yeah.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
by not charging.
Yeah, no, I've thought about stuff like that too, but it's kind of like if you're going to be an influencer to that extent, you're sacrificing, you can't be running another business unless you have somebody else running it for you. Um, I don't know these people personally, but like to be that successful on these platforms, it's unforgiving. You can't let your foot off the gas to a certain extent. Like, sure, certainly here and there, yes, but like if you want to, so to me, like I'm like I appreciate that. I think it's great. I'll watch those videos, but like I would have to sacrifice so much, like my business, potentially family time, all this stuff that I just like. It's not worth it to me to have millions and millions of followers. If I could figure out a better business system to do it, and I just need to show up, like great, hit me up anybody who wants to do that. But
Well, that's what I thought. That's what I was hoping. I was hoping I could push the record button and everybody would love me and I wouldn't have to do anything. But unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. You got to editing. There's so much. There's just so much.
there's so much that you don't see. Um, there's so like even just putting up a social media post, everyone's like, "Oh, just do it yourself," and I'm like, "Do it myself." I'm like, when I do, it takes me an hour and a half to put a post up. Like first you got to find it, and then when you add it to the thing, you got to scroll down and pick it up again, and then you got to do a voiceover, then you got to edit it, and then you got to put a title, and then you got to like tag everything, and then you put it up, and then you got to like comment. And like
And you're never satisfied with it either. You're like,
no,
man,
and then if you get like 200 likes, you're like, was that worth it? I
oh,
mean,
it's so
it's fine.
frustrating.
And I
Yeah.
try not to like put it. Luckily, like obviously, I think about it, and I think it matters for my business. But I think I've had a healthy association of disassociating it with it, and it's like it is not me. It's just an extension of me, whether it performs well or not. Obviously, I love it when it performs well, but
Yeah.
it does. Like I, my main business is my landscape business, and that has its own income streams, and that's running regardless of it. So the social is helpful and important, but it's not the make or break of me, which would make me nervous to just go and be a social media influencer solely. Um, because what happens if TikTok's banned? I guess this guy just starts up from scratch and is on YouTube now. I
Yeah,
don't
can
know.
you imagine? Yeah, yeah. So there's that dynamic too that politics now becomes like an issue for you on a day to day basis at a different level than it would be for just pulling
Yeah.
permits.
Hmm.
Because pulling permits are all local. That's all local. So you know that tomorrow it's relatively the same way. But you're right, TikTok can be gone in a blink of an eye, or
Yeah.
Facebook can pivot. Like Facebook just pivoted a little while ago, and they don't pay their shorts like they used to at all. So their
Mm,
little snippet videos are not at the same level that they were. So yeah, you
yeah.
have that concern too that things could just change.
Yeah. And I know some friends that have decent followings and they, yeah, it's like whenever these things change, it changes their whole income. Like, how stressful is that? Um, like, oh, okay, I was making $1,000 a month, and now it just literally disappeared. Now I got to reinvent myself, and maybe it's not the end of the world, but
No, you just got to pivot. I've heard guys say I just had to pivot and I had to go to Instagram or I had to do this or I had to make it
yeah,
longer or something to that effect.
right. I mean, I wish I was a bigger influencer, honestly, like in a way, just because like I feel like it's a great platform. I just like have a hard time just staying focused on like that linear growth. I like, oh, do I want to study this? I'm like, no, I do it because I kind of enjoy it.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't know.
Well, you did have one circumstance where you got to just push the button and have everybody like you. You were on TV for a little while.
That was helpful.
So how was that? How was that experience? Because like I
So
said, you got a guy doing the camera, you got a guy doing the editing, and you
yeah,
just gotta kind of just be like pretty and nice and pleasant and kind of scripted out, I guess, right? How does that?
they're not scripted. Um, but yes, they're different markets. And it depends on when you got on TV. If you got on TV now, it would be very helpful. It would grow your social following. Amazing. And like I still have shows on in and out, but I'm not. Jasmine Roth on HGTV. I'm not like
Yeah.
here. Um, there's like those big celebrities. Yeah, it's great. But when I started on TV like 10 years ago or whatever, there wasn't like a total connect from TV to not TV. And I noticed that some of the other hosts with me, they decided to invest and spend their time creating social media, and some of them did not. And those who did not, like, you're gonna gather people that want to follow you because of who you are, but a lot of times like you need to add value for somebody to want to follow you. And so like you need to actively be doing social media in a way that's valuable to them. So just being a celebrity is not enough. At least in our audiences of contractors and homeowners and stuff like that. Sure, if you're on like those dating shows, like you're gonna get a ton of followers. But it also has a shelf life of relevancy, because until the next
Yes.
show shows up, and like what do you have to offer that all these other people don't have to offer if you're just selling likes?
Yeah. Well, there is
More or
those
less.
dynamics. Yeah, there's the dynamics of you peak fast and you drop down pretty quick because you're only relevant
Yeah.
under that circumstance. Then
Yeah.
there's all kinds of other situations where you're right. You can't take off the gas because there's
Yeah.
20 other people coming right behind you, ready to go. But I think contractors in general have a unique.
Yes.
There's there's nothing about what you do that's mundane. Even the mundane stuff sometimes are the most amazing moments caught on film that you don't realize people were like, wow, I didn't know they even had to do that to get the door in. I had no idea.
Yeah.
You just don't know until and you guys have an unlimited supply of those moments.
Yeah.
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 So
Yeah. No, I think that's true. And when I think of that, I was like, oh yeah, I have that, but I gotta remember to film it and then remember to post it.
and do I really want to invest an hour doing that, or do I want to go get a drink with dinner? Because you're not doing both. You're not doing both. Because
Right,
once you're
right,
nice and
right.
comfy, and now
Yeah.
you that drink's in you, you're done. It's done.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm taking a
Sure.
shower or
And I
whatever
don't
it
want to
is.
complain. I've been super blessed to have what I have, and like the people that follow me, I think are really authentic and really caring people. Like, and I'm very grateful for that. I don't get a lot of when I first got on TikTok, I was like, oh wow, the internet's hard. Instagram is like people are like actually care about you. TikTok was a little bit more, they opened up to anybody and nobody knows you. And it's so funny to see the especially I think like when you first put out stuff and like nobody knows who you are on a certain platform, and they just make all these assumptions about you, and it's kind of like, oh, okay, okay, like that's interesting. That like there were some videos I was talking about concrete, and I was like, oh yeah, we're doing this, we're doing that. I wasn't clearly working on finishing the concrete, but I'm the owner of the company. I'm there checking on the forums. I'm there doing this and that. And so I'm like, yeah, we like I designed it. I brought the team, all this and that. So like I say we, and I got like 500 comments being like, oh yeah, we like
Well,
you
hold
come
on.
and take credit.
You put your heart and soul into something. I don't care if you touched it or not. It matters to you, and it becomes
Yeah.
we real quick.
Yeah, it's like, well, the project is, I got the client, I did the design, I brought the contractor, I am actually am more hands-on than well, I am a contractor, but I wasn't actually physically um building this thing. I was just talking about what was happening during the process. And um on my Instagram that would never happen. Everyone's like, oh yeah, great, we love you. I don't know. No, they're not like that. They're just like, that's cool. It's very loving and supportive. And on TikTok is like, who's this bee? Like, what she thinks she's talking about? Oh, taking credit for men's work. And I'm like, all right.
Yeah,
Okay,
how did
cool.
this get into? Yeah, how did this get there at all?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I know. I was like, all right, yeah, I'm supposed to be all like muddy and like look like, I mean, it's fine. Actually, like I don't even really care that much.
What you should have done is the next video. You should have had concrete all over you. You should have just bathed in it and then did some crazy video where
Yeah.
I would have definitely like shut down shop. Just
Yeah, no, it's fine. And honestly, like especially on TikTok, and this sounds bad, but it's like, all right, if you want 500 people to comment, great, I got a ton of views. You want I'm
yeah,
like,
the haters actually do you a favor. Yeah.
yeah, it's not that it's like I condone it, but it certainly is like interest interesting. And you see that I did something that was a promo, and it was actually for the siding company, and like that's again where it's just pushed out to a bunch of strangers, and that was on Instagram. And there's a handful of people, and I think I was talking about like women in construction, like, hey, they have these programs that you can like learn more, whatever. And there's just a lot of guys coming off being like, "Oh, make me a sandwich," or what else was there? Like, "Oh,
I don't know what it is, but I love that. I love that comment. Make me a sandwich. There's something about it. It just it
it's just
digs deep.
comical,
It digs
really."
deep real quick, and yeah.
It's like I don't really engage in most of them, but
But yeah,
oh, you know,
people know we know how to hurt each other so well.
yeah. Well, at this point anymore, like to me, it's just like I don't see it as a reflection on me at all. I am like, clearly this person is threatened. And it's like you choose to engage. I'm like, I probably won't change this person's mind on anything.
Well,
So
yeah.
yeah, I'll probably just ignore it.
Well,
Um,
there's another. Well, go ahead. Go ahead.
no, no, that's it.
Well, the element that you're not going to be face to face with me changes the dynamic of the conversation. You know.
Sure.
So if
Yeah.
I look you in the eyes, not looking at you eyes now, but I look at you in the eyes like we're standing 3 feet from each other, it changes the way you perceive that conversation dramatically.
Yeah.
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 And
100%.
especially as a guy, I didn't realize how much that matters. Because people say wild stuff on the internet. They say wild, outlandish things they would never have the audacity to say to my face. That would never happen.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting, and like I just know that's just part of the nature of
It
the
is.
job of being on social media at this point. Sure, it hurt my feelings a ton if it was somebody I knew, or but these are all strangers, and they're having their moment. And there's one guy I can't remember exactly. Oh, I think I posted an engagement photo because I got engaged recently, and all of them were all super supportive except for this one guy. Is like, and it was a partnership with Match, and I contacted Match and I was like, hey, you want a partner? And they agreed. So it was like cool. I was like, okay, great. Like, I'm happy to share my story. I'm usually pretty private about my personal life, but anyway, so I did a paid partnership with Match and put this out there. And then one guy was like, okay, like, so basically you were, and what's the common word people use nowadays? And you're a loose lady, and now you've decided to be not one.
I can't
And
think
I
of
was
it.
just like you know nothing about me, and I can't remember. There's other stuff, and I'm like, it was just fascinating. Um, it was just such negativity, and I was like, in my mind, I'm like, you probably don't have any female friends. Like,
Exactly. I was just gonna say that
yeah.
you gotta look at the psychology a little bit for a minute and say, number one, do you have time to talk trash about anybody else's life? So if that person does have the time, either really passionate about it, so why are you so
Yeah.
passionate about that? Because you don't know me. But that
Like, why would
doesn't.
somebody be so mad about somebody's engagement?
It
Like,
doesn't. Yeah,
that's
yeah,
like,
yeah. Number one, congratulations. That's awesome. I
thank
did see
you.
the picture. Two, there's another element of social media that's kind of wild that we don't even know the ramifications. Like Twitter, you can only do so many characters, so
Yeah.
you have to condense your hate speech into like
Yeah.
2 sentences, or your nonsense comment about a sandwich has to be condensed in a very precise and thought through 2 sentences.
Yes.
But on
Yeah.
Facebook, you can write a
Sure.
novel. You can write a novel. I've had two guys arguing over my post, and I wasn't even allowed to participate in the argument as they went back and forth. And I started reading a couple of them when I went down to comment number 87. I was like, that thing is like 19 paragraphs long. What were you thinking when you wrote that?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
It really
So
is.
some social media you could write this crazy story. Other ones you have to say in a short. So there's elements to that, and sometimes they feel more personal than they really are. It almost feels like you have a small mob outside your house, and, and really honestly, it's just a couple of strangers acting a fool because they're either
Yeah.
bored or they got bitter from being broken up or something from somebody a couple months ago. Who
Yeah.
knows what personal nonsense is being reflected
Yeah.
in that stupid comment.
Yeah, no, it's like I just see it as like fascinating. I did comment back to that one. But I oh,
But
it was just
think about it. So I'm not only am I going to see you happy, but I'm gonna shit on your parade real quick, just
yeah.
to get a rise out of you. I guess misery
And
likes company. I guess.
yeah, yeah, and like I think at some point you're like, okay, that's not worth engaging in,
No, it's
really.
not. It's really not.
Let's see, I even Okay, that's actually a nice one. Okay, here, I'm gonna read it to you. I have it. So long story short, quote, I was being a hoe and I have a 50 plus body. I have 50 plus bodies and I'm all used up. This is what this guy's writing about me. And since this company is giving me money, here's a fake message. Just like, where does all this hate? Where does all this hate
Why does
come
he have
from?
this specific number for a body count? Why, like, was he your neighbor for 10 years? I mean,
Yeah, and
where
I'm
does he?
like,
You
and I
don't
don't even
know.
find that as an, and this, I don't even find that as an insult. I'm like, first of all, none of your business, but second of all,
Yeah, yeah.
anyways. And this, I wrote back, oh, congrats on the first negative post. I'm like, but truly, it's such a fascinating perspective you have. I suggest you befriend some women so you realize that we are more than sex objects, and there's so much more to life than your current perspective allows.
Yeah.
Um, Obviously, it doesn't matter. And he just wrote back, just I'll just say it, loose. I'm like, okay.
What a jerk! What a jerk! Uh, and he
Right,
meant
but
it.
you
He
think,
meant it. He wanted that to go in, and he was
yeah,
trying to.
yeah, yeah. But you're right. But you're gonna get that stuff all the time. So the majority of the time, I don't engage in it. But like, all right, every once in a while, I gotta.
I think you ladies actually have it harder because there's nothing you could say to a guy that's an equivalent that hurts that would be as
Sure.
person. Yeah, you know what I mean. There's nothing. Well, I guess there is. I guess if you try hard enough, maybe I don't know.
Yeah, like you could, but I think like it's a diminishing returns. So it's
Yeah.
there's not a lot of motivation to like that person probably has very unhealthy relationships and it's just like not somebody that you're going to solve in a few social media posts.
No,
um
no, yeah, yeah. And
but
do you, yeah. Ah,
I do think like one of the most dangerous things are people like this that like have not great logic and have such anger. And and these are people that are being isolated. They have very limited points of view. They're probably learning about women from watching them on TV or worse, adult TV, if you know what I mean.
yeah.
Like they probably don't have any real connection with like women as their equals in
And
the world.
and and they get a vote.
Yeah.
That's even more dangerous.
Yeah.
His vote counts just as much as yours.
Uh-huh. Yeah, exactly. Which I'm sure they would be like, why should she even be able to vote?
I'm sorry for laughing, but it's just so crazy because it's so true. Like
I
people say the
know.
wildest things,
I
just
know. And
just unhinged, off the. Like I said, they would
yeah.
never say that to your face.
Yeah, and there's crazy women out there too, right? Like there's just
Oh
off
yeah, yeah, of
people,
course, of
no doubt.
course.
I just feel like in general, like men are more opinionated with less information easily. And that's a stereotype that I
Well,
have,
I
but
think I think you're poking in the water, though. I think you're poking in the water where it would be a male-dominated endeavor normally. So maybe that gives a little bit more like rough around the
sure.
edges. Maybe I don't know,
Yeah, yeah.
but
I
but
mean,
but I never understood the hater thing. Like when someone else does better to me, like one of my friends does better, I never understood like hating or shitting on the person. I never it
well,
never
you
even
sound like a
crossed.
secure person.
I guess maybe I don't even I'd never thought it through to the point where it just never made sense to me. Because if anything, I want to emulate what you did. I would like to hear your story, have a drink with you,
Sure.
and say, okay, that's great. Now let
Yeah,
me see if I could do something just as
yeah.
cool. Because it's way more fun to strive for more than to try to rip someone down.
No, I agree. I think that maybe we're in positions though where we have hope and that a lot of these people are maybe in positions where they don't really see a way to have their life be better. And
Yeah, the
so
mindset
instead
that
of,
mindset is huge. That's a good point.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so I think a lot of these people are just in like bad situations. And like, if that maybe makes them feel better for a few minutes, it's like, all right. I mean, I don't suggest it, but I think
No.
there's
Yeah.
better ways. Um, yeah. Oh,
Well, Sarah, I appreciate it, man. This is a great conversation.
yeah. It was a great conversation. I think we hit every point in life except for maybe hard politics, which we should probably just avoid.
Yeah, no,
Um,
I'll be honest with you. I stopped talking about nonsense arguments and stuff. I stopped watching the news altogether a couple of years ago. I found
yeah,
myself a couple of years ago, 5 years ago, arguing with aunts and uncles over like a nice family dinner about
sure.
other people's opinions. They weren't even my
Yeah.
opinions. And I'm thinking about this. I'm like, okay, we're not going to be friends anymore over something that doesn't even matter a week from now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I really saw that as like a turning point for my mind. I'm not gonna get stressed out about that. I don't
Yeah.
really. If it's really valuable, it'll be around for a month or two, and then we could talk about it maybe a little bit. But I'm
Sure.
not coming from another person's perspective, because
Yeah.
I think the news is kind of toxic personally.
Yeah. No, the news is very distracting. I think it's designed to be so. Um, there's benefits to it and there's definitely negatives to it. Yeah, I take it for what it is.
There you go. Yeah, and I'm better for it. I feel way more relaxed, not thinking about it all the time.
Yeah, makes sense. Very cool. Well, thank you for having me. One thing I didn't mention is that I do work with Steel very closely, and they're an awesome company that has been supportive of me for many years. So I just want to give them a shout out here as well. But
Yeah.
um, yeah, and if you guys are on social, obviously I'm on Instagram. It's Sarah with no H, SARABENDRICK, and then TikTok and Facebook and YouTube and all the things. So I'd be happy if you guys want to join me there anytime.
Fantastic. I'm glad you said it because I was going to ask you if you wanted to plug anything.
I've done a few interviews nowadays,
Yeah,
so
yeah, that's great.
like
That's great. I was kind of almost off.
speaking
I
of
was
new
like, wow, she's ready. She's ready. She's on point.
speaking of news interviews, it's like you don't know when they're going to cut you off, and so like if there's a natural spot to move it in, you got to take advantage. Or if you're working on behalf of a brand or something, you just gotta.
There you go.
So that's where that came from. So sorry if I
Yeah,
took
yeah,
you a
yeah. I
moment.
like it. I like it. I'll make sure it's in there.
It sounds like my earbuds are dying, actually.
So perfect timing then.
Yes.
Well, Sarah, I hope you have a great summer and enjoy the week.
Great talking to you. Let me know when the podcast is up.
I will let you know.
All right. Thanks.
All right.
Bye.
See you later.